apart from
Yeah,
Paul will be an apology, won't he?
yeah, I've received an apology from Councillor Richard Micklewright.
Richard Micklewright, yeah.
We're also now live on YouTube, Chair, so we can begin the meeting.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Yeah, I've received an apology from Councillor Richard Micklewright.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. 26th of March, Pension Committee meeting 2021. Welcome you to the meeting today. This being the last meeting of the Northamptonshire Pension Fund before it changes over to the Unitary. So it's a bit of a mixed emotions, I'm pretty sure, today, whether it was a good thing or not, but I'm pretty sure with the team that we got involved and the teams to come, the pension fund would be in very, very safe hands. So what we'll do is we'll start off with number one, and apologies for non-attendance. We've received 2 apologies for non-attendance today, one from Paul Tyso and Councillor Richard Micklewright. Item 2, notifications from members of the public to speak. None received. Item number 3, declarations of members' interests. Committee members asked that to note under the Code of Conduct they only need to declare an interest at the start of the meeting if that interest is not recorded in the Register of Interest. If any council declares such interest, they must add it to the register within 21 days of the meeting. And committee members should be reminded of the seriousness of not declaring a disclosable pecuniary interest. If a councillor declares such an interest, they must remove him or herself for the whole of the item, irrespective of whether they are a member of the committee or not. When declaring an interest, committee members are asked to state the item number which they have an interest, the nature of the interest, and whether the interest is a disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory interest. Do we have any declarations of member interests? None. Thank you very much. Move on to item 4, the chairman's announcements. Just remind the committee that we have a collaborative, inclusive approach to our meetings, and we continue to be encouraged where members have the opportunity to question and contribute and to discussion accordingly. As we have done previously, there's no need to indicate that you wish to speak if you don't wish to, but just allow the speaker at the time to finish before you ask your questions or clarifications you may have. This meeting is being live webcast to reflect the requirements of regulations regarding remote meetings. And at this time on the chairman's announcements, I wish to take the opportunity to thank the following officers and members for the contributions, hard work in supporting of the operations of this committee and the Northamptonshire Pension Fund. In no particular order and no particular importance, the pensions team itself of Mark Whitby, Paul Tyso, Richard Perry, Joanne Walton, Michelle Oakenson and Erhan Ryman. The independent advisors of Peter Gent, Mark Stevens. I welcome David Crum again to the committee for his first full meeting. So welcome, David, and I do wish you a long and enjoyable time on the Pensions Committee. I'm sure that you will enjoy it.
Thanks, Chair.
Our NCC finance officers, Barry Scarr and James Smith, thanking you both again for your involvement and guidance with regard to our financial decisions and the carrying on of the county pension fund. And pension committee as a whole, I forgot to mention Sophia, Corey Blows and Corey Blows and Sophia Nulty as well for their input and helping us in the fund on our legal sides as well. And without any least input is the members of our committee and our investment subcommittee. We've done, I think, in the time that I've been chair, we've done a fantastic job with the fund. Previous chairs and vice chairs also should be noted, and previous members also should be noted in the hard work and conscientious work that they've done to get the pension fund to the position it is at the moment. So again, no particular order. I'd like to thank Bob Scott, Malcolm Waters, Stephen Legg, and Jonah Roy, Anna Melda Capelbrook, Janet Blunsden, Rob Austin, Peter Borley Cox, Andy Longford, Richard Lewis, and Richard Micklewright. I do apologise if I've missed anybody off that list, but as chair, I'd like to thank you all personally for the input that you've given us, and have the, shall we say, the good guidance of our pension fund, which is brilliant, and the position where we are, I think, is an enviable position given the current situation within the world pandemic. So I thank you all. And with that, moving on to item 5. Does anybody else, sorry, before I leave, does anybody else have any questions on my announcements, or are they, I haven't missed anybody out in particular? No.
Only me, Chairman, but I won't hold it against you.
Sorry. Sorry, Bill. How can I forget my vice chair? Do apologise, Bill. Include Bill at the top of the list, please, Raj, in the minutes. Item 5A, sorry, Bill. Item 5A, minutes of the Pension Committee meeting held in public on the 11th of December 2020. I invite the committee to approve these minutes. We can do it as a whole if you'd like to unmute yourselves and just say aye, it'd be fine.
Agreed.
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 Any disagreements or abstentions? No, thank you. Item 5B, minutes of the Pension Committee held in private on the 11th of December 2020. I also invite the committee to approve the private minutes in a similar matter.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Any against or abstentions? Thank you very much. Item 6, the action log from the Pensions Committee meeting held on the 11th of December 2020. I invite Joanne Walton, the Governance and Regulations Manager, to introduce the action log from the meeting on the 11th of December 2020.
Thank you. There's actually nothing on it, so that's that one.
Thank you, Jo. I invite members to raise any queries or questions they needed on there. If not, I'd invite the committee to note the action log.
Noted.
So noted.
Yes, noted.
Good. Item 7, the administration report. I again invite Jo Walton to introduce the report.
Chairman, I'll just do a quick run through of this report. There's not a lot to say this time. So starting with section 2 of the report, which is the key performance indicators for the pension service. As you'll see from Appendix 1, there was one red indicator on there in January for issuing letters within 10 working days of receipt of all appropriate information on the transfer inside. There's an explanation within the report as to why that happened, and that shouldn't repeat itself going forward. Section 3 of the report, receipt of employee and employer contributions. We're now at a rolling average over the last 12 months of a return rate at 99.3% of employers paying their contributions over in time and in the right time frame. Section 4 of the report, breaches of the law. Here we have our usual breach of the law that we have to continue reporting. This particular breach of the law concerns a piece of regulation that will soon be removed from the pension scheme. I think I've been saying that for a year or so, if not longer, but we'll continue to report those breaches because that's the right thing to do. Section 5 of the report, got an update to make on this report with the internal dispute resolution procedure case. There was only one on here for this period. We now know that the monitoring officer didn't uphold the appeal as well at stage 2. So that's the update for that report, and that's really it. So happy to take any questions on anything else.
Jo, does any members of the committee have any questions that they'd like to put to Joe?
No.
Chair, can I just ask a question? Sorry. I've been, quite a few of our Unison members have come to me when they've had obviously 1 or 2 issues, and I'm getting more and more saying that they've not had responses from sort of the pensions email at all. I have mentioned it to Mark previously. Now it could just be that I'm only getting the ones that don't get through, but can I just ask, is there sort of I am very aware of the current situation with transfer of pensions and so on, so I am quite protective actually of the pensions team in this matter, but is there a sort of a general issue with corresponding with staff queries at the moment because of the transfer?
I don't think it's that as much as the fact that the inbox, pensions inbox is getting very full at the moment because we have no telephone system still because we're all working from home. There hasn't been anything that Northamptonshire County Council has been able to put in place for us. So every query from every member is going through the email system. So that and the increase of work resulting from the communications that we've sent out regarding the move to West Northampton Council has probably increased things quite significantly. That's a fair comment, isn't it, Mark? Would you say?
Yeah. So I mean, that's what's caused it. I think there was at its maximum, I believe it was a 4-day delay on the main inbox. So we were working just under a week behind. But that was that it increased to that length at the time. We we sent out the newsletter to all the active members around the local authorities, but also there were some communications around member self-service as well. So I think that's getting under control now. And we normally like to bring that back down to within 24 hours, but it did go up to just about four, even ever so slightly over working days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Sophia.
Apologies about that. My computer decided to kind of break about 9:20, and then I've been trying to get it back on stream since. So I do apologise.
No, that's fine, Sophia. You missed out our thank you, so I'll say it now. But thank you for your input in the last few months. You've joined the Pensions Committee for all your help and assistance. So thank you all again from the committee.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to finish up on this one, I'd like to invite the committee to note this report from Joe Walton on the governance regulations.
Noted.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8, it's a business plan update. I'd like to invite Mark Whitby, Head of Pensions, to introduce this report. Again, invite the questions from members if so needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be fairly brief on this because obviously we've got the brand new business plan and medium-term strategy as the next agenda item. So I'll just draw out a couple of points in this, and then I do intend to just walk you through the business plan activities for next year in the next agenda item. So just a couple of updates. We did on page 24, 3.1.2, cyber crime, cyber resilience. We did have some fairly late activity on that, whereby we undertook a questionnaire, a benchmarking exercise with Aon, our governance advisor. And we are in the process of formulating an action plan and also a specific activity around data asset transfers between our third-party suppliers, so where they hold our data and how that transfers to those different parties. So we're undertaking a very specific exercise around that and where the risks are in those processes, as well as formulating a wider action plan. So that's activity which will we'll round off at the beginning of the next financial year. And indeed, it will obviously lead to probably a lot more activities and, if you like, a project plan around cyber resilience. The other one I just wanted to mention specifically was the multiple investment strategies. You will recall, as a previous pensions committee, you commissioned or you allowed us to commission a piece of work with Hymans. We did originally expect that to come through by the end of February, but we've had a discussion with them, and they're going to deliver that at early April. That won't affect next year's business plan timings for this, but it has come just through a little bit later than expected. And the final thing on this, before I hand over to questions, is an apology for a rare error on the financials. You'll probably note in the forecast column on page 39, the eagle-eyed of you would have realised it doesn't match up with what we've got in next year's business plan, and it's because we haven't updated the investment income and the profit and loss on disposal of assets to what those end of year numbers were. So apologies for that, and the true numbers are reflected in next year's, and I can talk through that obviously when we come to the next agenda item. But yeah, just to reassure you, the return on the fund was as we've been reporting regularly through the quarterly reporting, a lot better than is reflected in those numbers there. And indeed, so the net return on investments, rather than being the 83 million, it was 610 million. So quite a significant difference.
It certainly is. I missed that, so I'm not too sure how we got on that one. But anyway, thank you, Mark. Open it up to any questions that you might have for Mark, please.
Well, I just apologise, Mr. Chairman, for my lateness. I'm afraid the technology beat me today.
Thank you, Richard.
5 years and beaten by the technology, so
Not too bad.
I just couldn't get in. Sorry about that.
No worries. Welcome anyway. So just sorry, and no questions then for Mark for any clarifications. No, so I'd just like then the committee to note the report then, please.
Note report.
Noted.
Noted.
Thank you.
Noted.
Well, we've lost his bit of paper now. Moving on to item number 9 then, quickly, the business plan and medium-term strategy for 21-22. And I'd like to invite Joe Walton to introduce this report. Again, members, please feel free to ask any questions or any clarifications you need during Joe's presentation. But please let us finish speaking before you do interrupt. Thank you. Joe, thank you.
I think Joe's going to say, she's going to hand it over to me, Chairman.
I did wonder that, Mark.
She looks slightly worried for a moment now. But Joe does an awful lot of the hard work on this business plan. It's fair to say. So she is very familiar with it. I will talk through each of the activities very briefly. But in terms of the format, you'll recognise this from what the business plan looked like when it came last year. In terms of part 1, talks through the structure of the service, the objectives of the fund, what business as usual is, because it's important to remember the business plan itself is the non-business as usual activities of the fund. I will just say on page 49, I am looking to make we prepare this about a month and a half out from the pensions committee meeting. Since then, I have got agreement to make a small change to the structure, which adds an extra direct report in myself. This is to enable us to deal with project activity a lot better, to free up some of Joe's time from some of the data work that she was doing, to free up Corey's time so he can concentrate on the funding, valuation and employer issues. That will have a minimal effect on the budget of the fund. So it's about half, it will work out about half a post. So it doesn't materially change the financials later on. But yes, just to flag, there is a slight change in the structure. But if I could turn you to page 57, which has the list of all the activities, and I'll just go through them and very briefly say a word and then throw it open to any questions that you may have. So the first section in terms of activities, details are obviously on the following pages, is the procurement. So we are in a standstill period at the moment for the regarding the procurement of the investment advisor. So the main consultant to the fund. We'll, as soon as we are able to announce the results of that procurement, we will do so and circulate it to all members of the committee. Concurrently, we are also looking at the custodian and undertaking a procurement of a national framework for that. Both of these are obviously flowing into the next financial year, which is why they're on here. We'll be looking at the actuarial benefits and consultancy contracts. We are extremely happy with our suppliers of those, but we do need to just see whether we want to extend or whether it would make sense to actually re-procure them at different times to each other. And finally, one which is longer term, and you'll recall as a committee, you agreed an extension to the software provider contract for Hayward some months back. We will need to go to a full procurement, hopefully from the actual framework that does now exist for this. But we will have to do that a year and a half before the expiry of that contract, because if we were to get a new supply, it would take a year to transfer, to re-establish all our workflow processes, etc. So that's the procurement. I've got an activity around the local government reorganisation, because that will increase the transactional activity in the fund, no doubt, as different areas go through service reviews. This activity is just to keep an eye on that and to make sure we have the right resourcing in place. The business continuity plan we will take a look at once West Northants is established, and we will see how we fit into West Northants and do the appropriate testing. The cyber resilience I've already mentioned, so I won't touch on that again. We are looking to get PASA accreditation, but I will not do this at the expense of other activities. So if we are able to do it in this time frame, we will do it. But because obviously it would be a very prestigious thing to attain. But I'm not going to do that, as I say, at the expense of other activities. Moving down, you'll be familiar with the Gmp Rectification project, which will be ongoing next financial year. The McLeod project, I see next year as being getting data in from the scheme employers and updating the records with that data. So this is data that is currently missing. And then thereafter, the rectification project will follow the the national time frame for that. We have the valuation of the fund coming up in 2022, so there will be some training next year, looking at things like assumptions in the lead up to that major project. Undecided levers or unprocessed levers, you'll be aware that this is one of the areas that hasn't gone as well this year as I would have hoped. We are looking to report in a slightly different way. So you'll see in the body of the report, what I'm saying is that we'll treat any case which is over 6 months old as a backlog, but otherwise we'll treat it as business as usual. So drawing a clear distinction between the two, and having a dedicated team and resource now to target those. The liability reduction exercise was on there as well previously, so you'll be familiar with that particular activity. Looking at the AVC, so you did agree to remove standard life at a previous meeting, which was delayed due to the pandemic, but we are actually re-looking at the outcome of that review, because I'm not sure if you have an awareness, but there has been significant issues with the performance of Prudential across the country recently, who are our other AVC provider. And so we do need to take a fresh look at whether actually the right thing to do would be to cease allowing standard life to be an AVC option, and forcing everybody to use Prudential when we know there are issues with Prudential themselves, which they have admitted. So we are undertaking a further mini review of that to see whether the original advice still stands up. And that's obviously for the benefit of scheme members. Multiple investment strategies, we're continuing. Some very specific and related to the evaluation process, employer covenant monitoring. So we're taking a really deep dive on some scheme employers. That's we're separating that out as a business plan activity in itself. And then finally, but by no means least, obviously the investment activities of the fund. So the development of the asset pool, so that will be clearly continuing the liquid asset sub-funds being launched. But the illiquid program is probably the largest thing there. So the asset pool being able to deal with alternatives, enable us to invest through the pool in alternatives, including property. I mentioned property because we actually got one of the largest things we need to do this year is to look at what we're doing on property, in light of the fact that the pool solution is still some years off actually. The responsible investment policy we'll be talking about later So I won't mention anything specific around that here, but obviously we're looking to launch a consultation on the revised policy, and then obviously there are many things that will flow from that. And finally, and I'm sure those members of the investment subcommittee in particular will be very pleased, looking at the benchmarking and the issues we have with, well, particularly how we report benchmarking for, let's say, alternative assets. So at a very high level, that's what the activities are. I'll throw it open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mark. I think you're going to have a very busy first opening to the new financial year, so to speak, with the pensions. So, members, any questions? I think there's a hand up. No, is that Janet just moving the camera? Does members have any questions or queries they want to put to Mark? Or Joe?
Yeah.
You dodged that one, Joe. Okay, then. So I'll just invite the committee to approve the business plan and medium-term strategy as put out in the papers.
Approved.
Moved.
Approved, yes.
Any against or abstentions? No. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark, for that, and Joe, for all your input as well, for compiling most of the data, I'm sure. Item 10, governance and compliance report. This one yours, Joe?
Yes, I'll do this one. Thank you. So this is the regular governance and compliance report to bring you up to date with what's going on in the world of governance and compliance for the LGPS. I wrote this report about 5 or 6 weeks ago because that's sort of the lead-in time to producing reports for Pensions Committee. So there's been some updates since then. So what I'll do, where there has been an update, I'll go through that through the report and perhaps take some questions at the end. So the first update, the public sector exit cap. As you'll remember, we've spoken about this at several meetings in the past, how that was introduced in legislation on the 4th of November. And then by the 12th of February, the government decided that no, the exit cap wasn't right. It presented unintended consequences, which I'm sure were mentioned during the 5-year consultation process. So on the 25th of February, the exit cap was formally withdrawn from legislation. Fortunately for the North Hampshire Pension Fund, we didn't process any cases during that time. So there's no rectification to any members' benefits needed as a result, which is good. But what was unfortunate was we spent a lot of time and indeed money implementing the exit cap, which wasn't exactly fit for purpose and didn't fit with the LGPS regulations, to have it withdrawn within a couple of months. So where we are now, we are informed by government that they will be releasing a new consultation on a new version of the exit cap. We have no idea how different or similar it will be at this stage. That's expected, I think they said the summer, but with the view that a new version of the exit cap will be put into legislation very quickly because the government still want an exit cap to be there in some shape or form. So then we will have to go through all the processes that we did before, responding to the consultation and then implementing the changes. Hopefully they'll run a bit better with the LGPS regulations this time. No doubt seeking more legal advice and all the communication with scheme members, employers, and changing our systems accordingly. So that's what we can expect towards the middle and end of this calendar year. Perhaps because that was such a big issue through the last 6 months, is there any questions I can answer on that at all?
No questions.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so the next item that I'm going to update in the report, happy to take any questions on anything else, is in the future developments section and section 5. Here, there are a few things pending at the time of writing this report, but now things have moved on. So the first item is the Pension Regulator's Code of Practice. Currently, there are 15 codes of practice in place to help scheme administrators govern and manage pension schemes of all types. There is one specific one for the public sector, which is number 14. But what the Pensions Regulator has decided to do is put all 15 codes of practice into one, which sounds like a great idea, but I'm personally not a fan of it because it's a huge now code of practice, and you have to really pick through it to see what is relevant to public sector schemes such as ours. That consultation was released last week. Michelle and I have about 250 pages of stuff to read and respond to for that consultation. We've attended several seminars and webinars to understand what it means and have a good think about it from an LGPS perspective. And then once it's gone through, which we're expecting to be by the end of the year, we will have, as a scheme, 12 months to put in place any changes that we need to make to be compliant with the Code of Practice. So we'll be keeping the committee updated with regards to that going forward. There's several new areas within that Code of Practice with regards to pension scams and cybercrime. So we'll be, those are really hot topics at the moment. So we'll be making changes with regards to that if we haven't already complied with the requirements as they are. Next item, Sit for Skills and Knowledge Framework. That hasn't appeared yet. I think we're expecting that in April. For those that will be with us in the new world after when WNC comes into place, we are setting up some training sessions for new committee and board members and existing members who want to revisit their knowledge. And that will be based on the new framework, Sit for Skills Knowledge Framework, although we haven't seen it, our advisors have. So that will all be incorporated in that. We'll have a new 18 months to 24 month rolling program of skills and knowledge being rolled out come next June, well, this forthcoming June, when we have all the new committee and board members in place. And then the final item on here I want to talk about is a good governance review. That went very quiet during the pandemic. You'll remember that I spoke at the March 2020 training session on that. Work has been going on behind the scenes, and that has reached a position now where the Scheme Advisory Board have presented their final findings and recommended outcomes to MHCLG for MHCLG to agree and put in place statutory guidance and anything else that's required to bring those changes forward and to make them part of our ongoing commitments to having a good governance in place for the fund. So we should expect to hear something from that during the middle of the year, depending on MHCLG's priorities at the current time. So that's all I wanted to update from the report. Although appendix, trying to find it now. Sorry, too many bits of paper. Appendix 2 has got the list of online and virtual training events that we have knowledge of at this current time. For those that will see us in the new world, 4th and 10th of June are the training sessions that we have set up. More detail on that will follow for anybody that will be required to attend those. So other than that, happy to take any questions on any of the content of the report.
Sorry, Chairman, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Joe. Good spot, Mark. Any queries or questions from the committee towards Joe on a paper? If not, I would just like to invite the committee to note this report.
Noted.
Noted. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joe. Item 11, funding strategy statement. It's Corey's. Did I say other?
Yes, that's correct, Chairman. Yeah, that's myself.
So I'm looking at my screen, Corey, and I can't see you, which is a bit of a shame, but I can now. Sorry.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Corey's paper. So yes, please, Corey.
Yeah, you're probably tired of seeing the funding strategy statement by now. I've brought it a few times in the last year to this committee, but that shows the pace of regulatory change that we've been seeing in the scheme at the moment. The particular regulatory changes that we've updated the agreement for this time are related to managing employer risk and exits from the fund. The original proposals did form part of the same consultation as the exit credits, which we previously updated the agreement for, but were brought in separately. So these came into effect in September last year, and allow us the formal flexibility now to agree an amendment to contribution rates in between the valuation cycles in certain circumstances where we feel the liabilities or the strength of employer covenant has changed, or where an employer specifically requests that we review the contribution rate. So this is something that was not necessarily prohibited before, but as we are aware was slightly difficult because it wasn't directly provided for in the regulations. That is now there. And similarly with employer exits, we are now formally able to enter into agreements to spread the payment of an exit payment if it's there. So if the employer leaves with a deficit, rather than having to pay that as a lump sum, we can formally enter into these extended arrangements. Again, that's been normal practice in the scheme, but it's got this firm regulatory footing now and a process for us to follow. So we've updated the policies accordingly. You'll see in the packs, if you've got the electronic pack, the changes are highlighted. Unfortunately, in my printed pack, because it's black and white, those changes can't be seen on the page. So if I take you to them in the report, the first one you will find on page 118. It's in the appendix to the report. So it's page 118 on your pack. This discusses exiting the fund. And we are just confirming that where the employer cannot afford to make a lump sum payment and it is in the interest of both the fund and the employer to do so, we will consider entering into certain arrangements. The first type of arrangement would see the deficit crystallized, but spread over a set period of time. And as long as the payments have been made, at the end of that period, the employer would exit the fund. In the second set of arrangements, which are referred to a deferred debt arrangement, that is where the employer continues to act as if they're an ongoing employer, but with no members in the scheme, and their contributions all go towards the deficit. And that would be reviewed every 3 years at the triennial valuation, until a point that it's agreed between the two parties to carry out a final valuation, at which point, if there's an exit payment required, then the employer would make that and then exit the fund. So it just gives us that extra flexibility. And our policy effectively says that we will look at all reasonable suggestions and doesn't fetter us to any particular route forward. So we've got that flexibility to do what we feel is appropriate. Sorry, earlier in the report, I'm just trying to find this now. Page 114, note F on that document covers the contribution rate reviews, and again just sets out the scenarios when we would consider that and the process that would need to happen in order to make that happen. Other than that, I don't have anything to add to the report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Corey. Does the committee have any questions or queries they want to put to Corey?
Yes, please, Chair. Can I just ask, what happens where an employer exits and later, I guess it goes bust? Do we have any claim on it? Because some of these, obviously, companies sometimes phoenix, don't they, and reappear as new companies. Do we sort of follow the money down the chain?
Usually, if it's insolvency, then the legal entity that we were pursuing the money for doesn't exist anymore, and our claim would end at that point. So what happens in insolvency situations, we fall in amongst all the other creditors. We do get priority for any outstanding contributions in the current year, but certainly for any outstanding deficit, we're just amongst everybody else. So we get part of that payment. So many pence in the pound effectively would get. What I should have clarified, sorry, is in these arrangements, what we do have in the policy is a specification that we would want to take security as a preference for entering into these arrangements, unless the strength of covenant of the employer is considered strong enough to warrant us not needing that security. So effectively, that's what would protect us in an insolvency situation. We're doing that at the moment with one employer in one of our other funds. We haven't had anything in Northampton where we've put that in place yet.
Debbie, thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Any other questions? No, then if we move on to the actions on this one, and it's to invite the committee to approve the amendments to the funding strategy statement in consultation with employers. Sorry.
Yeah, great.
Great.
Any against or abstentions? No, thank you. So that's been approved. Thank you very much, Corey, for that one. Moving on to item 12 then. It's again employers admission and cessations report. It's a report for noting. Invite Corey to present again, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have anything particularly to add to this report. It is just for noting by the committee, letting you know about employers that have entered the scheme where there is no discretion for the committee to deny entry to the fund, and it reports some cessations there as well. The only thing to update you on really is to say that for the unpaid contributions, the backdated contributions, from 2 of the employers, we have collected those backdated contributions. One of the employers was having some issues making that payment, so we're following that up at the moment. The ultimate course with that is there is provisions within the admission agreement to ask the scheme employer who sponsors them to offset some of their contractual payments and pay those to us to cover those contributions. And if there are further problems, we could terminate the admission agreement as well if contributions remain unpaid. So we'll explore those avenues as appropriate with this one.
Thank you again. And I think given the current situation, there's a few people having difficulties in sorting out their administrative duties. So notwithstanding that, I'm sure the team's on board and on the ball with that one. So there's a few items to note on this one. I think we'll take them all together if that's okay. So the first one is note the admission of the following admitted bodies to the Northamptonshire Pension Fund and approve the sealing of the admission agreements for Clean Tech Services, Coombs Catering Partnership Limited and Mighty Care and Custody Limited. Note the admission to the following designated body to the Northamptonshire Pension Fund, which is the Children's Trust. And C is note the exit of the following bodies from the Northamptonshire Pension Fund. That'll be Aspens, Compass Chartwells, Compass Contract Services. So I ask the committee to note that report, or those reports.
Noted.
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 Thank you. Duly noted. Thank you, Corey, for that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Now I think, Raj, we move into private session now.
Yeah.
So I'll just make this statement before we do so. And the